The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Introduction by Nevill Coghill. Part 2. Chaucer's Works. The order in which Chaucer's works were written is not certain. Some have been lost, if we are to believe the list of them given at the end of the Canterbury Tales in the retractions made by the poet. His main surviving poems are, before 1372, part at least of a translation of the Roman de la Rose, the Book of the Duchess, and the ABC of the Virgin. Between 1372 and 1382, the House of Fame, the Parliament of Fowls, and most probably a number of stories or preliminary versions of stories that were later included in the Canterbury Tales. Among these I incline to place the Second Nun's Tale, the Clerk of Oxford's Tale, much of the Monk's Tale, the Man of Law's Tale, the Tale of Meliboeus, and the Knight's Tale. These seem to indicate a phase of moral and pious interest, qualified by an intense feeling for the romantic and by increasing touches of wit and personal observation. The House of Fame and the Parliament of Fowls are longish allegorical fantasies of much humor and delicacy. They contain passages of that rich conversation in verse which it is one of Chaucer's peculiar powers to invent, and in both poems the poet himself appears in person as a plump simpleton, much as he does in the Canterbury Tales. It was his pose to regard himself with a mild mockery. Between 1380 and 1385, Troilus and Chrysippe, and the translation of Boethius, De Consolation Philosophine, were completed. The latter is the main basis of most of Chaucer's philosophical speculations, especially those on tragedy and predestination, which underlie its twin, Troilus and Chrysippe. This poem, the most poignant love story in English narrative poetry, is also one of the most amusing. It is his first great masterpiece, yet all its humor can stand comparison with any tragic love story in the world. Its psychological understanding is so subtle, and its narrative lines so skillfully ordered, that it has been called our first novel. It appears to have given some offense to Queen Anne of Bohemia, Richard's wife, because it seems to imply that women were more faithless than men in matters of love. Chaucer was bidden to write a retraction, and so in the following year, 1386, he produced a large installment of The Legend of the Saints of Cupid, all female, which is also known as The Legend of Good Women. He never finished it. His disciple Lydgate said later that it encumbered his wits to think of so many good women. From 1386 or 87 onwards, he was at work on the Canterbury Tales. There are some 84 manuscripts and early printed editions by Caxton, Pinson, Wynkyn de Worde, and Thynne. These manuscripts show that Chaucer left 10 fragments of varying size of this great poem. Modern editors have arranged these in what appears to be the intended sequence, inferred from dates and places mentioned in the endlinks, as the colloquies of the pilgrims between tales are called. For convenience, these manuscript fragments are numbered in groups from A to I. Group B can be subdivided into 2, making 10 groups in all. If we may trust the prologue, Chaucer intended that each of some 30 pilgrims should tell 2 tales on the way to Canterbury, and 2 on the way back. He never completed this immense project, and what he wrote was not finally revised even so far as it went. There are also 1 or 2 minor inconsistencies which a little revision could have rectified. In this rendering I have followed the accepted order first worked out by Furnivall, 1868, and later confirmed by Skate, 1894. It makes a reasonably continuous and consistent narrative of a pilgrimage that seems to have occupied 5 days, April 16th to 20th, and that led to the outskirts of Canterbury. At that point, Chaucer withdrew from his task with an apology for whatever might smack of sin in his work. The idea of a collection of tales diversified in style to suit their tellers and unified in form by uniting the tellers in a common purpose is Chaucer's own. Collections of stories were common at the time, but only Chaucer hit on this simple device for securing narrative probability, psychological variety, and a wide range of narrative interest. In all literature, there is nothing that touches or resembles the prologue. It is the concise portrait of an entire nation, high and low, old and young, male and female, lay and clerical, learned and ignorant, rogue and righteous, land and sea, town and country, but without extremes. Apart from the stunning clarity, touched with nuance, of the characters presented, the most notable thing about them is their normality. They are the perennial progeny of men and women. Sharply individual, together they make a party. The tales these pilgrims tell come from all over Europe, many of them from the works of Chaucer's near contemporaries. Some come from further afield, from the ancients, from the Orient. They exemplify the whole range of contemporary European imagination. Then, particularly addicted to stories, especially to the stories that had some sharp point and deducible maxim, moral, or idea. Almost every tale ends with a piece of proverbial or other wisdom derived from it, and with a general benediction of the company. One of the few tales believed to be his own inventions is that of the canon's yeoman. Some have imagined it to be a personal revenge taken by him upon some alchemist who had duped him. But, be that as it may, it is one of the best of the tales. It was not considered the function of a teller of stories in the 14th century to invent the stories he told, but to present and embellish them with all the arts and rhetoric for the purposes of entertainment and instruction. Chaucer's choice of story ranges from what he could hear, such as tales of low life and oral circulation, like the Miller's Tale, that are known as fabulæ, to what he had read in Boccaccio or other classic masters or in the lives of the saints. To quote Dryden once more, "'Tis sufficient to say, according to the proverb, that here is God's plenty." The present version of this masterwork is intended for those who feel difficulty in reading the original, yet would like to enjoy as much of that plenty as the translator has been able to convey in a more modern idiom.